How's it rockin', Dween Nation? You're listening to the Dween Sports Podcast. We're about to get underway. But before you give us a listen, we'd love if you could like, comment, subscribe, and share. We are posting weekly sports content, and we want to build up the brand that is Dween Sports. Thank you all, and enjoy.
Welcome in, Dween Nation. This is your host, Justin Paez, alongside Genoa Agudelo, and we are here to discuss the waiver wire heading into Week 9 of the NFL season. We got two teams on bye. We got the Niners, and we got the Steelers. So you can't start, Jordan Mason, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, George Pickens, Najee Harris. So there's some names that you can't start, and obviously there's always injuries that have happened over the last week. And so you're going to need to utilize the waiver wire to help you. We're going to help you beat your Week 9 opponents, and we're excited to start it here. But before we do, Genoa, how you doing, man?
Yo, Dewey Nation. How's it going there, Dewey Nation? It was a tough week for me a little bit in fantasy there, Justin. You actually slapped me in our Elite League. It was an ugly loss there. So I'm looking to get rebounded there. And, it's on to next week, Justin. We're still in the midst of the fantasy playoffs there. We're almost there, Justin, about 4 or 5 weeks out there. So, Dewey Nation, this is the tough stretch for fantasy. If you're 2 and kind of 6 there, this is the time to kind of turn things around there. Don't give up out there. My guy here, Justin's always preached, don't give up until you're officially mathematically out of it. So out there in Dewey Nation, it's still time. We've put money into these leagues. We've got bragging rights, maybe other fantasy punishments on the line there. So yeah, everybody out there in Dewey Nation, it's time to make the run. And luckily, Justin and I have the waiver wire picks, the formula to go out there and ultimately win us those fantasy championships.
So we're going to jump into the waiver wire. I'm excited to touch on quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, defenses, and I'll start us off here at the top. And I got Matthew Stafford against he plays the Seattle Seahawks this week. He's got his 2 number 1 wide receivers back with Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua. If you listen to our takeaways episode, we're very excited for that. As Genoa mentioned, we got big hopes for Puka, but just having those 2 guys. We even saw Demarcus Robinson have a really good game last week. Kyron Williams is always there, of course. And it's just in a matchup where I think, divisional game. So I think it's going to be played very well. And I think we've been wanting to see, I think Stafford himself even has been wanting to see things kind of build up. And we've seen him obviously in the past be a very stable quarterback to have in fantasy. I think this week is one of those weeks that honestly, he might now become a guy that you can start every week. But this week's a perfect play to stream him in. And, he's only owned in, I think I'd write down, 18.5% of leagues. So widely available, great matchup, and he's got all his players back.
Yeah, Justin, definitely like Matthew Stafford going forward there. These Rams, Justin, you can make the argument that these are one of the teams when they're fully healthy there with Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. This is a team that we want to see in the postseason there, Justin. If it had to come down to with them or Tampa Bay kind of getting that last wild card spot there, we might have to go with the Rams, but the Rams are still in contention on winning their division, so maybe we won't even have to worry about that. Justin, he's playing with the guy that, Cooper Kupp, who had one of the best wide receiver seasons ever, and Puka Nacua had one of the best rookie wide receiver seasons ever. And these are guys that we love to see play football there. They could be we love it when they're in shootouts like they were this past Thursday. It was a little bit of a shootout there against Minnesota. So I definitely love Stafford there. And Justin, you can make the argument that this could be Stafford's kind of last season go around. He could probably go into next season, but Justin, he's getting up there in age. He is from the 2009 draft. So this could be kind of Stafford's last kind of stretch to the playoffs there. I think McVay is sort of eyeing a new quarterback going forward. So definitely like Matthew Stafford there. I'm going to have to pick him up there because I think Jordan Love potentially could miss there. And so that's something to look out there. Definitely like Stafford, who's only owned in 18% of fantasy leagues. So for me, I'm going to go with Justin Herbert, who had a fantastic game there yesterday, Justin. Justin Herbert, this was a guy that last year and years before, he was picked in drafts. And this year, Justin, I think almost every draft you and I did, Justin Herbert was not really picked at all. And that's very surprising there. Maybe it's because the lack of receivers he has there. But he had 2 touchdowns and both of them went to Lad McConkey there, who is taking over. And they do have, other just guys there like Joshua Palmer, Will Dissly, Jalen Rager. I'm kind of hoping to see Braylon Rice soon, Jerry Rice's son, very soon, and kind of throw him in there. Maybe that's kind of the juice they need, but unfortunately, he hasn't really gotten many snaps at all this season. I don't even think he's gotten his first catch. So hopefully we see him later down the line. But I do like Herbert to kind of take things up a notch a little bit. I know the Saints aren't good, but they do go to Cleveland, which is a tough defense. And I do think that Justin Herbert could have a great game there. He is a dark horse sneaker pick, kind of to have a top 5 finish next week. But then he has Tennessee at home. Then he gets Cincinnati as well as Baltimore, which Baltimore has been able to been thrown on pretty easily. So this is a quarterback. If you have buys the next couple weeks, I don't know if you guys, we do have buys this week, but I don't know if anybody's really starting, Wilson or Purdy. But, if you have some, Jordan Love injuries there going on, definitely, or you weren't able to get Stafford. And so I definitely think that Justin Herbert is a guy that you can kind of lean on for these next couple weeks. There's just some tough defenses that are a little tough on the run that kind of will kind of impose Justin to kind of just throw. So I think Herbert is a sneaky play. Obviously, we're dropping Trevor Lawrence now, just because Christian Kirk is now out for the season, and Brian Thomas is going to miss the next couple weeks. So even if you have a guy like Trevor Lawrence, definitely is a guy that you can drop and go ahead and add Herbert there.
Yeah, no, I actually really like the Herbert idea. I think what was holding him back is obviously you could argue the run scheme. They run the ball a lot. They're slow paced, but I think he was just missing a wide receiver to kind of establish themselves as the one. But now we're seeing that with Lad McConkey, 2 big touchdowns on Sunday. So I think that's kind of going to start opening things up. And then I think also the sad story is as much as we love J.K. Dobbins and the season he's been having, that surprised everybody, is he hasn't averaged more than 4 yards a carry since week 2. So he's become more and more inefficient, and he's had pretty solid matchups. I mean, Arizona and the Saints over the last 2 weeks, and he couldn't average more than 3.5 yards per carry in those games. So there is some worry that maybe this Chargers offense, the running game, is just not as effective as they want it to be. And I don't think anybody else behind him is going to change that with Gus coming back or Vidal being there. So I think they're fine with JK there, but I just think he's become less reliable to get those big scores, and they're going to need to rely on Herbert more. So I like that there. And then like a brief honorable mention, of course, Jameis Winston should be on this list. Just the fact that the Browns are going to be throwing the rock a bunch. And yes, that's the only reason I think he's not on the list right now for us out of these top 2 is because he plays the Chargers this week, which is somewhat of a tough matchup. Then he has a bye week. So it's kind of hard to jump on a streaming quarterback that you won't really want to use for 2 weeks. And then last thing I actually forgot to mention with Stafford is look at this man's schedule. He's got 5 straight easy matchups. We got Seattle, Miami, New England, Philadelphia, and New Orleans. So 5 straight matchups that you can use Stafford for without worrying. And then even then, he plays the Bills at home, which you could see a shootout potentially happening there. And then San Francisco and New York, the New York Jets are average matchups, but then he ends with the fantasy playoffs, the championship against Arizona. So Stafford might be a guy that you actually might be able to use. So that's our quarterback talk. I know we went long on there, but Stafford and Winston, and then of course Justin Herbert. But we'll move to the running back side, or I'll try to throw out a running back because, be honest, me and Jano were looking this week. It's rough out there in the streets for running backs to pick up. There was really no standouts on the week, but the only one that I saw that I think could be useful is Roschon Johnson. So yes, Swift has been kind of he's really turned his season around over the last a month and a half almost. He's been a top 5, top 10 RB. But the thing that seems to be somewhat constant is when they get to the goal line, it's been Roschon Johnson. So yes, Roschon's not getting a bunch of touches, but he's getting the goal line, and so and he's only owned in 12% of leagues. So the to me, having a goal line back and an offense that's average to somewhat above average in the league, I think that having the goal line running back is kind of important to have just on your bench. Not a guy I think you can go out and start, but I think someone that's worth a pickup, a cautious pickup, because I wanted to mention a running back. We wanted to mention somebody that you could jump to use if you really needed one, because it's pretty weak out there. I know a lot of people might be being like, "Oh, Jordan Mason got hurt. I got to run to Isaac Garindo." But McCaffrey's return is on the rise. We're going to see him after the bye week, so Garindo's not going to be useful. McLaughlin's really untrustworthy. You could maybe mention Zeke Elliott. He had most of his touches, more touches than he's had all season, but that was with Rico Dowdle missing for an illness, so we expect Rico to be fine next week. And then after that, it really becomes a desolate landscape, unless you want some handcuffs like Blake Corum being out there, Ray Davis. But there really is nothing. But what do you think with Roschon? And then you can give your take on your next guy.
Yeah, Justin. Yeah, Roschon Johnson's had 4 touchdowns scored there. He missed week 1. And so, obviously in week 2 against the Texans, he didn't get much carries there. And so, this is definitely a guy that you can definitely look into. Swift is the speedy back, the shifty back. As Roschon Johnson is the guy that gets all the goal line touches. It's very crazy, Justin, that we do not hear from Khalil Herbert. I'm not sure if he's hurt or anything like that. But that's pretty interesting to kind of take away from the season as far as the Chicago Bears. And you mentioned, the running back kind of waiver wire is very thin. It's not good at all, actually, Justin. We might get another kind of wave next week potentially, or the week after. But Dewey Nation, if you're dying to get some more running backs, Justin mentioned Zeke, and Garindo is a guy that maybe you could pick up, but it doesn't really make sense to pick him up right now just because the 49ers are going into the bye week. The window was open today for McCaffrey to begin practicing. And he has 21 days to practice. And obviously the 49ers, like you mentioned, they have a bye week. So, it should be 14 days. And, from here on then till next play at least. So, I mean, maybe Garindo's a guy that you can cuff. But then again, Jordan Mason will probably be healthy as the handcuff to McCaffrey. So, maybe Jaleel McLaughlin probably, maybe. And even then there, Justin. So, I wanted to say Dalvin Cook, Justin, for old time's sake, because I was such a big fan of Dalvin Cook when he was a Viking, but even then it doesn't make sense. So I'm going to, you had the one running back for this week. I'm going to just go ahead and put 2 receivers. In my first receiver, I'm going to go with Xavier Legette. There's some talks out there now that Deontay Johnson's going to be traded, and I wouldn't be surprised with Devontae Adams being traded and Amari Cooper. And being traded, and not to mention DeAndre Hopkins just got traded. So, Deontay Johnson is very young, is younger than Hopkins, younger than Mari, younger than Devontae Adams, and so definitely is a guy that a lot of contenders are looking in for. My Houston Texans potentially might have lost Stephon Diggs for the season. They already don't have Nico Collins, who should be back in 2 weeks, and Tank Dell is struggling a little bit. I know he scored a touchdown yesterday. But potentially, Deontay Johnson could go to Houston, or maybe a team like the Chargers who need another receiver to pair up with Ladd McConkey. So definitely, looking into. I want to mention the Broncos as well. The Broncos are playing really well there. They need to get Bo Nix a guy, and maybe they should have just had Deontay Johnson stay in Denver and made the rights to trade him. And so for me, I'm going to go with Xavier Legette. He is becoming that number 1 guy there. Scored a touchdown, I believe, yesterday. Looking at Xavier Legette, he is the guy that we kind of assumed would eventually kind of take those roles there in Carolina. We're not sure when Adam Thielen is going to be back. He's still on IR, but we mentioned Deontay Johnson there, and they don't really have a dominant tight end there in Carolina that we're even thinking of picking up, or even thinking of putting in DFS lineups there, Justin. So Xavier Legette is going to get all the volume, and now Justin, he's now scored a touchdown with not only Bryce Young but with Andy Dalton. And thankfully enough, we're not sure what Carolina is going to do going forward just for the rest of the season as far as quarterback. Thankfully Andy Dalton's okay, and his off the field kind of car crash there. We hope he gets back on the field, and hopefully he gets balling. But if not, we're hoping that Bryce Young kind of takes the keys back to this franchise. They're going to, if Bryce Young has any future of being a Carolina Panther after this season, Justin, he is going to need to develop a rapport with Xavier Legette, and that starts, going forward after this, matchup. They had a loss that we assume would happen in Denver, but this is going to need to be something that the Carolina Panthers need to get done if Dave Canales is going to want to win another football game, and that is Xavier Legette building that chemistry with Bryce Young, and I believe he does, Justin. Xavier Legette is only owned there in 24% of leagues, and I do think that he potentially could be, breaking out. So definitely this is a guy that you should be targeting going into this waiver wire week.
I think Legette is a great pick, especially with the news that Deontay Johnson is on the trading block, or at least people are inquiring about him. I mean, it came from Schefter, so I think where there's smoke, there's fire. I think it'd
Yeah.
be really, really funny if, we saw the Jets trade for a wide receiver. We saw the Bills trade for a wide receiver. Why not another division teams trade for a wide receiver in the Patriots? Get a guy that, your young quarterback can rely on. But I do think he might be on the move, which is sad for the Panthers side, but opens the door for Legette to kind of, that he was a first-round draft pick. So it opens the door for him to get those looks. And, he's had some flashes this season. And on a team where they're going to be down in just about every game, I think Legette's a great pick there. Moving to my pick, don't get mad, Dwayne Nation, but this is somewhat of me. I'm repeating what I said last week because unfortunately in the league, in many leagues across ESPN at least, nobody listened to me, unfortunately, and I said Cedric Tillman was the prime wide receiver pickup, and he came out and was the wide receiver 3 on the week. But looking on to this week, he's only owned in 16% of leagues. He only went up by like 15%. And now I think people are going to start to get it. And this is just me standing on top of a chair, yelling it on top of another chair, yelling it, so you guys can hear me. But I really do think Cedric Tillman, it should be quite literally the number 1 pickup in off the waiver wire this week across all positions. The way that this Browns offense is going to roll, it's going to be Njoku and it's going to be Cedric Tillman to me, out of the pass catchers. So I just think Tillman's going to be phenomenal, and he's really stepped up in the absence of Amari Cooper. And now that the offense is exciting to watch, I really think Tillman to the moon, man.
Wow, Justin, I guess we're starting bold picks or spicy takes a little early this week there. Not playing. Definitely like Tillman going forward. Jameis Winston is going to be the starting quarterback for the rest of the season, barring no injuries. And, Jameis Winston's history, he is a pass-heavy guy, was that quarterback at Florida State. When he, got to the scene at Tampa Bay when he was drafted number 1 overall, looked for, guys like Deshaun Jackson and Mike Evans on a consistent basis. Justin, I think one year he threw 30 picks and 30 touchdowns there. And, Jameis Winston is a guy that's not going to care, and he's going to throw all the time. And that's going to be not only to Njoku, but a guy like Tillman. And, definitely like Cedric Tillman, they kind of go off from there. Cedric is a guy that I think he has potential there. He kind of cooked a pretty solid defense in Baltimore. Obviously, they've been kind of thrown over on a lot this season. There's still a defense to be respected, and Cedric Tillman was able to have a great fantasy performance. I think he had 25 fantasy points this week, and so crazy enough, and that's 25 without the I would say it's 19 without the bonus, 19 20-ish without the bonus. That's still great there, Justin. So Tillman's a guy that you can definitely potentially plug and play. They're still home next week against the Chargers, tough defense, but obviously, like I mentioned, if you've lost Ayuk, you've lost Mike Evans, if you've lost Stephon Diggs now, we've had some bye weeks going into next week. If you're not going to be able to play Pickens and stuff like that, definitely you could be able to start Cedric Tillman. If you're also not feeling too hot about Devontae Adams, I do think he has a great game this Thursday night. Maybe Cedric Tillman is a guy you can plug and play there. So definitely good pickup. Cedric Tillman for me. Justin, you and I, we've been so optimistic about this Arizona offense. They've been so on and off. And yes, yesterday they had the bright side of things kind of showing out there. Trey McBride had a great game, and so did Marvin Harrison Jr., but so did Michael Wilson. And Justin, looking at this Cardinals offense, I'm going to be very optimistic going forward because I'm a big Kyler Murray fan, even though he's an Oklahoma Sooner, and I hate the Sooners, but he's a stud at quarterback. And you know what? I feel like this offense potentially could be taking a step up there, and they had a great game in Miami, a very surprising game. It's tough to kind of figure out when we're going to see a great, Kyler Murray and Marvin game. And, looking at this offense, Marvin Harrison is taking off. He has 5 touchdowns on the year. Trey McBride hasn't scored a touchdown yet this year. He did have 100 yards. But Michael Wilson's a guy that you can pick up there. He's second on the team in receiving touchdowns, third on the team in receiving yards. And, if this offense can just be a little bit more disciplined, I would like Michael Wilson kind of week in and week out, kind of being their Godwin, Kind of reminds me way back 5, 6 years ago with the Cardinals when their quarterback was Carson Palmer, and they still had the future Hall of Famer Larry Fitzgerald, but they also had a guy, Michael Floyd. I
Yeah.
don't know if you remember Michael Floyd, number 15. I was watching highlights from the Cardinals when they beat the Packers in the divisional round, and that year that the Cardinals were really good, coached by Bruce Arians. Michael Floyd was a touchdown magnet there. Kind of like what, if you remember, a Terrence Williams in the Cowboys with those Tony Romo, Des Bryant. That's what Michael Wilson reminds me of, Justin. He's the guy that is a very sneaky play. He scored a touchdown. And if this offense can be a little bit more disciplined, I do believe that this is a guy that you can pick up and start going forward. A great flex option, a solid flex option, Michael Wilson is. Next week they do have Chicago. They are a tough defense, but Justin, Arizona is home. If they were in Soldier Field, I would be a little bit hesitant about this, but they're home. I do think that potentially Kyler Murray could be playing from behind. So maybe, just maybe, Michael Wilson can get 100 yards and a touchdown. Looking towards their schedule, they do have the Jets the week after at home as well. I do think that Sauce Gardner is going to be lined up against Marvin Harrison. That's going to be a pretty good matchup. And I do think that no one's really going to be paying attention to Mike Wilson. Then the week after that, they go to Seattle. So a couple decent matchups there. I do think that Michael Wilson is a sneaky play there. Only owned at 12% of fantasy leagues, which is expected. But I do think that going forward, that is a kind of second, third option that Kyler Murray could definitely rely on.
I actually, looking at the schedule, I'm really excited. Obviously, Chicago and the Jets are tough matchups to me. But after that, they get the bye. So 3 weeks is somewhat tough. But if as you mentioned, if they can just be a disciplined offense and be more consistent, they're explosive. I mean, Kyler's got an arm. Marvin Harrison, great. Trey McBride's great. James Conner's great. And Michael Wilson, to me, can fit right in there. And then, as I mentioned, like right after the bye week, Seattle, Minnesota, Seattle, New England, Carolina, and the Rams. They get an easy matchup every week through the rest of the season. So Michael Wilson might be a guy that you can just buy in early now. And he has the talent. I believe he was a second or third round pick in last year's NFL draft. So he's in it for a good. I agree. I really like the pick there. He's not owned, very widely. I think it was 12.5%. So he's available everywhere. Scoop him up. You don't have to start him this week, but I think he might be a good play this week. We saw Terry McLaurin have a very good game last week. And I like that Arizona is home. But yeah, so, and moving past that, we always end our episodes, our waiver wire episodes, with our defensive streamers of the week. And I have the Philadelphia Eagles. This one's pretty easy for me, just looking at the fact that they've played very dominantly over the last couple of weeks. They dominated the Bengals. They dominated the Giants. And I think this is and they even dominated Cleveland, but Cleveland's not very good at the time. But so they've had 3 straight very solid weeks. Now they play the Jacksonville Jaguars at home, where we won't see Christian Kirk. We most likely won't see Gabe Davis, and we also most likely won't see Brian Thomas Jr. So it's a lot of unfortunate injuries that are looking to plaguing the Jaguars, even Travis Etienne. So they have Tank Bigsby and Evan Ingram, and I think that's a formula where the Eagles defense can continue to dominate, and they will do so as a prime pickup this week.
Yeah, Justin, it's going to be rocking in Philadelphia this week. The Eagles are hot. And you know what? I love that pick a lot because, Trevor Lawrence's success has come a lot through Brian Thomas Jr. And Justin, yes, he's going to be out 2 to 4 weeks. It was announced today that Brian Thomas will be out. Christian Kirk is out. And Gabe Davis, he's probably going to be out. But even if he plays, we're really not too impressed with what Jacksonville has been able to offer. Obviously, Tank Bigsby has been kind of, besides Brian Thomas, the kind of the shining point of Jacksonville's offense. Travis Etienne, he was out this week, and we're not really sure even if he's healthy, if he's really that top guy that we saw, 2 years ago. And so, looking at what they have now, they do have Evan Ingram, they do have Parker Washington, who we are familiar with, and then that kind of puts in Tim Jones and Brenton Strange, who is the backup tight end, to kind of be those next kind of guys. And I'm not really too thrilled about it. I think Philly's a home crowd. Their defense is good enough to pressure the quarterback, get to him. I don't think they will be able to move run much. I do think that if we had a scoring prediction for this game, I know it's only Tuesday, I do think that the Eagles already win 30-3. So I don't think there's much to go along for there. I have this feeling that maybe the Eagles have a punt return touchdown or kind of a special teams play that gets you points there in your fantasy lineups. So definitely like the Eagles there. I'm going to go with the matchup that you might have to wait till next Monday night. And I'm going to go with the Chiefs. They're going to be home with Tampa Bay. And look, when you look at the Chiefs, they're always going to have that grudge against Tampa Bay. You know, obviously Tom Brady's not there. Obviously Gronkowski's not there. But Patrick Mahomes is going to see on the schedule, oh, Tampa Bay, oh, the defensive coordinator of that Super Bowl where I got dominated is now the head coach. All right. And I do think that this defense still holds a lot of grudge. And Baker Mayfield isn't my favorite quarterback in this league. In fact, he's probably one of my least favorite players in the league. And I do think that with this defense at home on Monday night, they are going to get to Baker Mayfield. I mean, one of the best defensive players in this league right now, in Chris Jones, is going to shred that offensive line in the interior, and he's going to be able to pressure. And one thing about this Chiefs defense, you know, yes, they're not the flashiest, the nicest. They're not the Legion of Boom or the 2015 Broncos or the 2015 Panthers where they're getting sacks and pick sixes and fumbles. But, Justin, they're going to get stops every way of they can. And we talked about Tampa Bay. We're boosting them up. But, Justin, they're going to go into this matchup with no Mike Evans and no Chris Godwin. I do think that they're going to be able to cover Cade Otton as best as they can. Not only going to be able to cover Cade Otton, there's not really great weapons to go to. They have an aging Sterling Shepard and Jason McMillan, who I like, but I don't think he'll break out till late in the year. And not to mention that, you know, Rashad White has had back-to-back pretty decent games, and I feel like he's going to struggle this next Monday night in Kansas City. They're going to be rocking an Arrowhead. They're going to want to get to 7-0. Baker Mayfield is going to struggle, and I do think that Patrick Mahomes is going to be able to put a couple touchdowns ahead. And this defense is going to be playing Spags, one of the best defensive coordinators in the league, if not the best of this generation. He's been able to pull off some crazy things as long as he's been a defensive coordinator. And so I just want to mention that, you know, this is a great plug and play there for Kansas City going into next week. So definitely like Kansas City there home with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going forward, or for next week at least.
I'm interested because I did, you know, I mentioned in the takeaway episode about how I think the Bucs can be a scrappy team this year, but they are going into Arrowhead. Gosh, and a game where I think the Chiefs, as you mentioned, they got the somewhat of a rivalry with, you know, losing that Super Bowl a handful of years ago. So I think it's a good take there. I'm interested. I think, as you mentioned, you know, the one real game we saw Baker struggle very, very mightily, it was because the Broncos blitzed them out the wazoo and gave them so much pressure, and I could see the Chiefs doing the same thing. So I like that take there. But yeah, Dewey Nation, those are our waiver wire picks for week 9. So get your claims in, get it ready to go. And yeah, hopefully it leads you to a week 9 victory and on. So thank you for listening. We got a lot more content headed this way. So please like, comment, subscribe, share. You got bold predictions, game predictions, buy low, sell high, and starts and sits of the week. So we got a lot, you know, to discuss. So we're excited to do so. But so yes, just stay tuned, and Jano, send us out.
Yeah, Dewey Nation, this was our waiver picks. You know, on the road, on the hunt, on the journey to the fantasy playoffs. This is about to get really exciting there. So enjoy as much of this fantasy season as we can, because Justin, here in about a month and a half, it's going to be over there. So definitely, guys, thanks for checking us out. You know, let us know what we can do better. We love hearing, you know, opinions out there. You know, if this player is not a guy you want to get going forward, let us know why there. Comment, you know, down below. And so thank you guys for watching. We love you guys. And as always, peace.